You can see the objectives of this video on the screen. At the end of this video, you will be able to understand what is there for ABAPers on top of HANA. And you will be able to also explain what is code pushdown. I'm sure by this time you must have already watched the first four videos for introduction to HANA. And in those videos you have already learned what is HANA, why we need HANA, what are the features of HANA, what you can do with HANA, what is the architecture of HANA, what is S4 HANA, what are the different replication techniques for HANA. And you have also learned that already SAP has automated multiple different business processes on top of HANA. So on this background, the main question is, what is there for ABAPers? When I start thinking in this direction, the first question that comes to my mind is, do you really need ABAP on HANA? In order to cater to this question, first you need to think, what is the purpose of ABAP on top of ECC? Yes, ABAP is a proprietary language of SAP. So you use ABAP as a customization language on top of ECC. Then obviously, if you are going to use HANA as an underlying database, your client will definitely need some customization on top of it. So the answer of this question is yes, you really need ABAP on HANA. So just relax. Definitely there is a need of ABAP on top of HANA. And where we are going to use it? Obviously for doing the customizations on top of HANA. However, the way you do it on ECC and the way you do it on HANA will be completely different. For example, suppose you have ECC system in your project and your client decides to move to HANA system. So the first thing that you will do is you will move your data from your ECC system to HANA system. And as a next step, you will also copy your custom code from ECC to HANA system. Now, once you copy your custom code from ECC to HANA and when you try to execute that code on top of HANA, what will happen to your custom code? Logically, when you say that HANA has a great capacity to handle huge amount of data at a very high speed, your custom code should run with a very high speed automatically. That means your custom code should run automatically with better performance on top of HANA. But does this happen in reality? No. In reality, sometimes your custom code might get better performance, but most of the times it runs with poor performance. The question is why it happens so. In order to get the answer of this question, you need to first analyze how you work on top of ECC. For example, in ECC you have some database. On top of that database you have application layer, and there is obviously a two-way communication between both the layers. Now suppose you want to write any program or a report in ECC. You fetch the data from the database and then you store it in application layer in internal table. You do further processing in internal table and display the output on the screen. That means if you want to do any further database related operations or any calculations on aggregations on top of your data, you perform those operations in internal table and then you display the output on the screen. So with this classical approach, most of the processing of the data happens in the application layer. So the database related calculations or aggregations are mostly handled in application layer in internal table because we are not supposed to give more load on underlying database. This concept is called as data to code. Then what happens with HANA? When you use HANA, you are supposed to push these database related calculations in underlying database. That means if you are writing a report, and in that report if you are supposed to do some calculations or aggregations, with a new approach on top of HANA, you will be pushing those calculations and aggregations in underlying database itself, and you will be displaying only the output on the screen. So that means you will be pushing all database specific calculations and aggregations into the database. This concept is called as code push down or code to data. So you need to first understand what is code push down very clearly. Code push down is nothing but pushing all database related calculations and aggregations into the database. And why you do it on top of HANA? Because HANA has the capacity to handle huge amount of data with a very high speed. It can handle such calculations with a very high speed. When you were using any other classical database, those databases didn't have this capacity to handle huge amount of data with a very high speed, and that is why you used to pull the data into internal table, and there you used to do further calculations. Now the scenario has changed. Now your database is very powerful. It can handle huge amount of data with a very high speed, and in order to leverage this feature of HANA, you have to use code push down on top of HANA. So that means it is a complete 360-degree change for ABAPers. The way you plan your report, the way you design your report in ECC is completely different than the way you will now plan it on top of HANA. So when you will be writing your code on top of HANA, you will have to ensure that you are implementing code push down on top of HANA. Unless you implement code push down on top of HANA, you will not be able to see better performance for your programs, for your custom code. That means if you want to have better performance on top of HANA, you will need to use different code push down techniques. And SAP has introduced different code push down techniques which can be used by ABAPers. So ABAP on HANA is nothing but learning different code push down techniques. You might have already heard about OpenSQL, CDS views, AMDPs, so on and so forth. These are all nothing but different code push down techniques. And in this course, you will learn these different techniques. You will also learn when to use which technique. So all the best. Please go ahead and complete your learning for ABAP on HANA.